U.S. President Donald Trump is threatening to send military forces into Nigeria unless the government stops what he called the killings of Christians by terrorists. Trump posted the message on Truth Social, saying the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may very well go into that now disgraced country, guns blazing, to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists, he says, who are committing these horrible atrocities. Trump says he's instructed the Department of War to prepare.
Nigeria has drawn a sharp line in the sand, warning the United States to respect its sovereignty after U.S. President Donald Trump threatened to invade the country over what he called the mass slaughter of Christians. The West African giant's government fired back with a firm but measured response, saying Trump's allegations of Christian genocide are false, exaggerated, and dangerous, and that Nigeria will not tolerate any interference in its internal affairs. The drama began when President Trump, in a characteristically fiery post, accused Nigeria of allowing the extermination of Christians and vowed to go in guns blazing if the situation continued. He even announced that all U.S. aid and assistance to Nigeria would be cut off immediately, a move that sent shockwaves across Africa and raised serious questions. Is Washington really ready to go to war with Africa's largest democracy? And for what? Human rights or hidden interests? President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's response came swiftly. In a statement personally signed by him, Tinubu dismissed Trump's assertions as misleading and not reflective of Nigeria's national reality. He stressed that religious freedom remains a cornerstone of Nigeria's constitution and identity, and that the notion of a Christian genocide is entirely false. Nigeria, he said, opposes religious persecution and does not encourage it, emphasizing that both Christians and Muslims have suffered from the violent extremism of groups like Boko Haram and ISIL. Tinubu noted that his administration continues to engage openly with both Christian and Muslim leaders to ensure peace and security for all citizens, regardless of faith. While rejecting the U.S. designation of Nigeria as a country of particular concern, Tinubu nonetheless expressed willingness to cooperate with America and the international community to protect communities of all religions. But even so, he made it clear that Nigeria's sovereignty must not be violated. A diplomatic way of saying, tread carefully, Mr. Trump. Backing up the president's words, officials across Nigeria's political and diplomatic spectrum echoed the same sentiment. Kimiebi Imomotimi Ebiemfa, spokesperson for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, dismissed Trump's narrative as baseless. In his words, there is no Christian genocide in Nigeria. He admitted that Nigeria faces severe security challenges, but said the violence cuts across all religions. Christians, Muslims, and even traditional worshippers have been victims. Ebiemfa stressed that the Nigerian government has not sanctioned any killings and is doing all it can to crush terrorist networks, but instead, that cooperation must not come at the expense of national dignity. Similarly, Daniel Bwala, a presidential advisor, reiterated that Nigeria would welcome U.S. assistance only if it recognizes territorial integrity. Trying to tone down Trump's inflammatory remarks, Bwala suggested that the U.S. president likely thinks well of Nigeria, but has been misinformed by far-right circles pushing divisive narratives about religion in Africa. But are the claims of a Christian genocide in Nigeria really true or false? Listen to what Mr. Bulama Bukati, a Nigerian humanitarian lawyer and analyst on conflict and development, had to say on the truths behind such claims.
Absolutely not. The answer is a flat no. all the data reveals is that there is no Christian genocide going on in Nigeria. And this narrative is a dangerous, far-right narrative that has been simmering for a long time that President Trump is amplifying today. It is very dangerous, it is divisive, and it is only going to increase or further increase instability in Nigeria. What the data reveals is that there are terrorist groups claiming to be fighting in the name of Islam, who are misinterpreting Islam and misapplying it. They target Muslims and Christians anywhere they find them. They bomb markets, they bomb churches, they bomb mosques, and they attack every civilian location they find. They do not discriminate between Muslims and Christians. And what the data shows, for my PhD research, for example, I used the data, the Nigerian securities tracker data, which was collated by the Council on Foreign Relations. And it shows that Boko Haram had attacked 83 churches and 72 mosques, but it had killed more than 2,000 people, more than 2,000 Muslim worshippers in the mosque, as against about 1,500 churches or people killed in church. So, and I mean, we are not comparing one or the other. Both of them are wrong. All attacks on innocent civilians are wrong, and we should be working together to stop Boko Haram from.
The killings that have drawn Trump's attention are sadly not new. Nigeria has battled militant insurgencies for nearly 2 decades, most notably Boko Haram in the northeast and Islamic State-linked groups across the Sahel. These groups have killed tens of thousands and displaced millions. Yet, the violence is far more complex than Trump's black and white framing suggests. Much of it is driven by poverty, resource conflicts between farmers and herders, ethnic rivalries, and the collapse of rural governance, not purely religion. But what has the government been doing? And why does it still persist? Here is what Mr. Bukati had to say.
The Nigerian government has, over the past 10 years or so, allocated billions of dollars to insecurity. And they have claimed to have purchased weapons and reformed the Nigeria's military and security architecture to confront the crisis. Unfortunately, the situation continues to escalate. Part of it is lack of good governance. Part of it is corruption in the security procurement sector. Part of it is negligence by the government. Part of it is resilience by these groups, because these are guerrilla groups that hit and run. And it is not easy tackle groups like those. But also, Nigeria has vast swaths of land that have not been controlled or governed for many years, and these terrorists find their enclave or their harbor there, and that's where they operate into the cities and retreat back to their jungles. It's very difficult.
The facts show that both Christians and Muslims are being targeted, often indiscriminately. According to data from the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, out of nearly 2,000 attacks on civilians this year alone, only a small fraction were explicitly based on religion. The reality, experts say, is that Nigeria's crisis is one of extremism and insecurity, not a religious war. So why is Trump suddenly painting it as a Christian genocide? And what does he stand to gain from such a narrative? Listen to what Mr. Bukati said about the potential implications of Trump's comments and whether his help will be beneficial.
Sure. So, Trump's narrative, the way it will affect Nigeria is that Boko Haram and other terrorist groups in Nigeria are common enemies of Nigerian Muslims as well as Christians. And the only way you can defeat this enemy is by uniting. Trump's narrative is dividing Nigerians dramatically, even more than before. And the only person that will benefit in this division are the terrorists. And of course, American help with weapons, with equipment, with training to the Nigerian military will help. But the kind of action Donald Trump was suggesting, which shows unilateral intervention in Nigeria, will only escalate matters and is going to be counterproductive. The United States has nasty experiences in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and I don't think they want to repeat that mistake. And therefore, the way forward is to work with the Nigerian government, to work with Nigerians, Muslims, and Christians who are affected by this violence, and to do things in calm ways rather than announcing things on Twitter or doing social media foreign policy. I think Trump and the American government can help, but
Trump's comments shocked even seasoned observers of US-Africa relations. His threat to go into Nigeria guns blazing, and his declaration that the Nigerian government better move fast sounded more like a movie script than a diplomatic policy. But his actions have real consequences. By halting aid and threatening invasion, he risks destabilizing an already fragile region and staining ties with one of America's closest African partners. Nigeria's military, though stretched, remains one of the strongest on the continent, and officials have made it clear that they are ready to defend their country. The notion of US troops landing in Africa's most populous nation over a disputed religious narrative is alarming and could set a dangerous precedent. After all, what message does it send when a foreign power threatens to invade an African democracy under the pretext of protecting Christians? If America were to make good on Trump's threat, the consequences for Nigeria could be enormous. Sanctions and aid cuts would hit an economy already battling inflation and insecurity. US military intervention could inflame existing tensions, provoke anti-American sentiment, and potentially unite extremist factions under a common enemy. It would also test the unity of Africa's regional bloc like ECOWAS and the African Union, both of which have consistently opposed foreign intervention in domestic African conflicts. More broadly, it would force the continent to confront an age-old question. When Western powers claim to be helping, are they truly helping, or merely pursuing strategic and resource interests? A glance at history offers sobering lessons. The modern history of US foreign policy is marked by a recurring pattern of military intervention, often presented as brief operations to solve humanitarian or security crises, which instead resulted in protracted conflicts and compounded regional instability. For instance, the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001 and Iraq in 2003 were launched with the stated primary goals of dismantling terrorist organizations like Al-Qaeda and deposing Saddam Hussein's regime, which was falsely accused of possessing weapons of mass destruction, with both operations initially promised to be quick, decisive victories. Similarly, US involvement in Libya in 2011 as part of the NATO-led coalition was justified as a humanitarian mission to protect civilians from Muammar Gaddafi's forces, while military action in Somalia escalated significantly post-2009, has largely focused on counter-terrorism against Al-Shabaab. In each case, the initial rationale was later revealed to be exaggerated or flawed. The WMD claims in Iraq were false, and the quick operations evolved into long, expansive nation-building efforts. The Afghanistan war lasted nearly 20 years. Iraq saw a major occupation, followed by a resurgence of conflict a few years after the initial withdrawal. The resulting power vacuums and political fallout in all four countries have been devastating, leading to the rise of more extreme militant groups like ISIS in Iraq and Syria, a collapse into civil war in Libya, the Taliban's rapid return to power in Afghanistan, and the persistence of Al-Shabaab as a major threat in Somalia. These invasions have ultimately caused an estimated 4.5 to 4.7 million direct and indirect deaths across the post-9/11 war zones and displaced over 38 million people, leaving the nations significantly worse off in terms of security, stability, and humanitarian welfare. So, would an invasion of Nigeria, an independent democracy of over 230 million people, be any different? Experts warn that it would not. In fact, it could be far worse. Nigeria is the beating heart of West Africa, an economic and political powerhouse whose collapse would ripple across the continent. A US invasion would not only destroy infrastructure, but also deepen ethnic and religious divides that extremists could exploit for decades. Instead of fighting terrorism, it might create more terrorists, just as Iraq and Libya did. Surely, Africa has seen this movie before. Some critics suggest Trump's threats have less to do with religion and more to do with power and profit. Nigeria, after all, is one of the world's largest oil producers and sits atop vast reserves of critical minerals. Could the talk of protecting Christians be a smokescreen for a more familiar story of Western greed cloaked in moral outrage? Whatever the motives, one thing is certain. It is up to Nigeria, not Washington, to resolve its own security problems. As President Tinubu has said, Nigeria must protect its people, defend its faith, and strengthen its unity without bending to foreign intimidation. The world is watching. Africa is watching. And one question now echoes across the continent. Will Nigeria stand tall? Or will it be the next chapter in America's long, bloody history of questionable liberations? Your perspective matters. What do you make of Trump's threat to invade Nigeria and Nigeria's response? Share your thoughts and insights in the comment section below. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to the New Africa channel and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our informative future videos. Stay informed, stay engaged, and thank you for watching.